Good morning, everybody. As my inflammatory title suggests, that's right, I have finally broken the mold and made a character build that gets worse when you have past lives. The way that this character works is essentially, instead of just using past lives to increase in strength to make your character stronger, faster, I want more hit chance, I want more movement speed, or I want more will saves as a passive. No, none of these things are good enough for this character. Instead, we are taking a look at one of the more interesting versions of the past lives, which is the active versions. For those of you that don't have a lot of them, the past lives that you gain have an active and a passive component if they're based on a class. As an easy example of one that's used by almost every single magic user in the game when they can get their hands on it, the wizard past life, when taken as an actual feat, the active version, where you can select it while leveling up, grants you +1 to all of your DCs. Spell Focus Conjuration, Spell Focus Evocation, why don't I just take past life wizard and get both at the same time? Every single class reincarnation has an active feat that can be taken at level 3 or higher, and these feats give you some additional unique ability from that class. Most of them are terrible, and some of them aren't quite terrible, but they're just kind of unique, I guess? And this is one of those such cases. For you see, today we are looking at the past life druid build, the Harbinger of Nature, which allows you to summon flame blades as if you had cast the spell. Now there's a whole multitude of reasons to do this and not to do this. As a druid, the flame blade spell allows you to use your wisdom to hit and damage with your flaming sword. In pen and paper, it's very useful for those caster druids who want to be able to still do something while they're in combat and attacking some people, and it's a representation of your pure will, allowing you to use your wisdom to hit and damage. In DDO, however, it is also quite useful, again, if you're playing as a caster druid in the low levels. A lot of the caster druid spells really just don't live up, as you can see from the caster druid build that I played before. However, Flame Blade is great because it lets you take your casting stats and just turn them into offense for a short period of time. However, this spell has never been the absolute best for a whole bunch of reasons. The first problem is that Flame Blade is a weapon that deals exclusively fire damage. This might sound kind of good, but it doesn't deal slashing damage at all, even though it's based off of a scimitar. And this means that if you encounter a monster like a Grey Ooze that is completely immune to fire, unfortunately, you actually can't do any damage to it. The second problem is that for the longest time, it's a pretty weak weapon. This was changed with the Feywild expansion update, but for a very long time, this weapon didn't scale very well either. It did increase in power as you leveled up, but not really with your character, and it stopped scaling at level 20, which meant if you got to level 20 and decided you want to go to level 30, well, you have to find a new weapon, and unfortunately, that means you have to find a new way to get your wisdom to hit and damage. The idea behind this character is that I wanted to try making a melee build that used the Flame Blade as its main focus, but also was actually kind of good at doing melee damage. Initially, you might have this idea that you should play as a druid, which is kind of a smart idea, but the problem is, if you play as a druid, most of the druid's melee prowess and abilities come from the animal forms. And if I'm in animal form, people can't see the fact that I'm dual-wielding flame blades, which is pretty much the entire reason to do it. So since I want to show it off, staying in my human form is one of the most important aspects of this character. Now the second component is thinking, okay, well if druids aren't very good at melee, maybe you could just multi-class, throw some fighter in there, get some Kensai, get that critical threat range and multiplier, and just start whacking away with the flame blades. This has the second problem, that now since the flame blades actually scale their power based on your caster level, having less levels of druid means that your weapon is actually weaker than it would normally be. At level 20, you'd be casting level 14 flame blade, which is not very good. It's actually the one that I'm going to show you later in the video. To get the top tier flame blade, the one is actually scaled for endgame DPS, you need a caster level of 30, and with only 14 levels of druid, it's actually not possible to get a caster level of 30, which is very unfortunate. As a result, this leads to the odd problem of the only real way you can make a flame blade druid build work is by playing as a pure druid. Now this is kind of cool, you can play as a fire elemental, automatically bypass fire immunities by going fire elemental form and casting Body of the Sun. It's a great idea, but you don't really have any of the damage that you need to back it up. My solution to this problem was to play Tempest Ranger. Tempest Ranger does a ton of damage, it hits lots of monsters, and it's very, very good at melee. The only downside is I have to take this feat to be able to get access to flame blades. On top of that, you need to find a way around the fire immunity problem, because that's a big deal. Now you might think to yourself, but if I cast the flame blades, won't I have the same cast level problem as druid? And the weird thing is, the feat, since it's actually a feat and built into your character, the cast level is based off of your character level. This means that as long as you just level up, by the time you hit 30, you're casting a level 30 flame blade, and you're able to get the best version of the weapon at the end game. So if you have this really cool fire sword that's made of fire, so it bypasses all forms of physical damage reduction, I don't need to worry about Rakshasa with their silver and piercing and good damage reduction. I don't have to worry about Abishai with their good damage reduction. I don't have to worry about Archons and their evil damage reduction. This sounds great. Is there any downside to this, especially considering you can bypass the fire immunity? And the answer is yes, all over the place. The bypassing of fire immunity can be gotten from the Tiefling tree, which is great, except it takes 16 points in the enhancement tree to actually make it work. So you have to go pretty deep. So not only can I play a druid flame blade build as a ranger, which seems cool, but the cost of this is that I need to spend 16 points in a racial tree before I can actually even start using this build, because many monsters are immune to fire all over DDO. And I need to take a feat. So if I didn't actually take the Flameblade feats, and I didn't need this point in the Tiefling Universal Tree, then my character would actually just be able to use regular weapons and do way, way, way more damage. So this is a scenario. A character that is going to look cool, impress your friends, and also be worse than if you didn't have past lives and didn't do this build. It's been a neat experiment so far, and I will say I love the look of my character, and also just seeing all those big fire numbers coming up across the screen is very satisfying, especially as a ranger. You don't do a lot of fire damage as rangers, so it's very cool to see this actually kind of come together. Now, one of the main hangups about Flameblade, just in general, and the same problem exists with Shadowblade from the Fade Arc Illusionist tree, is that once you get to level 30, because you have to conjure them, you can't put Sentient Jewel inside of your conjured weapons, which means you can't actually use a sentient weapon, which is a large portion of the power for a lot of endgame builds. However, that's actually going to change at some point. It was foretold in one old Lamania patch that the raid is going to drop weapons in Feywild, and these weapons, some of them will be incarnations of the Flameblade and the Shadowblade, as well as a new Frostblade. However, they'll actually be raid items, meaning you could use this build while leveling, hit level cap, and then swap into a real endgame raid item. We don't know if this is going to change in the future or before the raid comes out, but if it does, then it works and you can play this build the entire way through. If not, either way, regular ranger is good enough, better than this build. If you'd like a regular ranger build that you can follow along that will do more damage than this and also be a first life character, click the link up above and it'll bring you exactly where you need to go. Otherwise, pay attention and I'll show you how to build this abomination that looks very cool. So if you want to play your own flaming sword character, let me show you how I'm doing mine so you can try yours. As I mentioned in the opening, using these flaming swords, while very cool, is straight up worse than just using regular weapons. So this build does have requirements and also is worse. So to get started, this is my character here, Strimtom. I am a 14th level ranger, and I am a tiefling. This character is wisdom based, using wisdom to hit and damage. Important note, it is actually better to be dexterity based and kind of dump wisdom, which I learned as I was going through this, because Tempest Rangers get dexterity hit and damage with all weapons while dual wielding, and so you actually don't even need to pump your wisdom. So if you are to rebuild this character, it's probably better to just go dexterity instead of wisdom and keep your wisdom at like a 10 or something, and then max out your dexterity and have really high defensive and offensive capability. On top of that, being able to use the actual Tempest Capstone, which we will be taking. As far as the skills go, this character uses, for the most part, swim, spot, search. I like to put points into listen and heal because I have lots of wisdom, so I was like, why not? Use magic device is also important. Now, the reason why this character is actually going to stay wisdom and I'm not going to rewrite it or rework it is because I'm experimenting with something else that I'll talk about in a little bit. But for now, just say you need Dex as the most important stat if you want to try this character. But I'm also using concentration for something I'll talk about in a little bit. As far as your feats go, rangers get all of the combat style feats for free, so you don't need to take a single one of these. As a result, I decided to take a couple different abilities. I took Quicken for affecting my Scorch, allowing me to remove the fire immunity from monsters as easily as possible. And then on top of that, this character also needs to take access to the Harbinger of Nature's Wrath at level 3. This is what gives you Flameblade, so without this you can't cast Flameblade. So again, keep in mind you have to take this feat at level 3. It's what makes your character work. Outside of just that, then for your martial feats, Precision and Improved Critical Slashing are both important feats. So in terms of feat order with this character, at level 1 I took Precision. I then took the Harbinger of Nature's Wrath at level 3. And then at level 6, I took the Quicken Meta Magic. Then at level 9, I took Improved Critical Slashing. And then finally, that's when I started to go into some of the defensive feats, and I picked up Dodge at level 12. I'm going to be picking up Mobility and Spring Attack as I continue to level for this character. Now, since I'm Wisdom-based, I have a lot of access to spells. Apparently, I have so many spells I didn't even put them in. Important note that you don't get Cure spells until 8th level, and then the Cure spells are pretty much the most important spells you're going to be taking. As well, Ram's Might is good. It gives you strength, and it also gives you increased bonus to damage as well. So you want to take those ones. And then finally, for your 4th level spells, I'm going to be taking Cure Series and then Freedom of Movement. All the other spells are not really that good. Ranger spells make you sad, especially when you look at these two spell lists. As far as enhancement points go, the key thing that makes this character function at all is this Ash ability, which when cast with this effect Improved Scorch, when cast on a creature that is immune to fire, it makes them vulnerable to that element for a short period of time. So you need to make sure that you're using this on monsters that are immune to fire ahead of time. This is going to fix all your problems. This doesn't stop anything that has resistance to fire. So for example, a Slod has resistance 30 to fire, so that's not going to solve this problem because you're still going to do basically 0 damage. But anything immune, fire elementals, fire methods, and champ resistances, it's going to strip all of that away. And then we have Tempest here, taking all the good stuff out of Tempest. Attack speed boost, straight up damage, the improved parry for the physical resistance rating, all the cores, grabbing Storm Dancer for elemental absorption, since this character doesn't have super high magic resistance rating, especially while leveling. Another benefit of having max dexterity instead of wisdom like I did is elaborate parry gives you increased dodge, and max dex bonus to your light armor equal to your dex modifier. So basically, if I had, let's just say 33 dex right now, when I press this button, it's 11 points of dodge, which gets even better as you level up. So again, pretty good. And then top tier, you're going to want to make sure you grab Dance of Death as soon as possible. Now, there's a couple different ways you can build this character differently than I did it. The way I did it in general is I put all my points into Tempest, and then once I had 16 enhancement points, I then took everything out, put it all into Tiefling, spec'd it out just like so, except I had to do a little bit of respecking to get this point at 7. Put it in just like so, and then started putting my points back into Tempest later. But 16 points is all you want to spend. You can't get it right away, so just use your Flame Blades, shove in some other weapons until you're level 4 with 16 enhancement points, and then put them in here. Of course, if you have access to racial points, this is easier. I don't, so that's where we're at here. For the rest of your points, this is pretty much what I would use for Tempest. I'm going to be taking Whirlwind, and then also Dervish here, probably putting my last point into Elaborate Parry, so it lasts for a little bit longer. As far as the rest of your points here, Falconry and Deepwood Stalker are the two places I'm kind of going back and forth between. I think I'm going to do Deepwood Stalker because I really want to get access to Advanced Sneak Attack for the extra critical threat range, as well as the Fortification Bypass, which is just nice. Plus the Sneak Attack damage, as it turns out, is actually fire, which is very weird, since my weapons deal exclusively fire damage. As well as gaining access to one of the best attacks in the entire game, this Called Shot attack, which is extremely powerful, and just a lot of good defensive abilities in here, like the extra health and things like that. You could put points into Falconry instead, giving you access to both No Mercy and possibly Deadly Instinct. If you happen to have racial points, this is a little bit easier because you can squeeze in some more points here, but I don't, so I would probably be able to get a little bit of No Mercy and then call it a day and grab the extra Falconry attacks. For me, though, I'm not going to use Falconry. I don't think the attacks are very valuable for this build. We're going to be going to Deepwood Stalker and testing it out that way. Now, of course, if you haven't seen the Flame Blade in general, I probably should have mentioned this sooner. This is my Flame Blade right here. As you can see, it's Wisdom to hit and damage, as well as Dexterity to hit and damage. No Strength option here. No Strength allowed. This weapon, of course, is a 19 to 20 times 2. Normally, it's times 3 because I'm a Tempest, so I get that extra critical multiplier right there. And this is a level 10 version of the build, or the weapon. So it's got Fiery 3, doing 3d6 of fire damage, Fiery Blast, doing 3d6 of fire damage, as well as an extra 3d6 on critical, and Incineration, which has a chance to deal about 250 fire damage, which is pretty cool. Weapons, not the greatest in the world, but it's pretty good, and it updates again when I increase and level up. So if you wanted to try this out yourself, you have a character that will have a weapon that levels with you while you play through the game. Is this a good idea? No, it's actually worse than just using regular weapons. A Barovian weapon is better than this, and it's free. So, again, there is no reason to do this. It requires a past life, but I wanted to do it because it seemed kind of fun. So we're going to continue experimenting. Now, the last thing I want to touch on before I end this video is the fact that I said, oh yes, I am in fact going to be using my wisdom, and I'm going to stay the course. And the reason is because we were thinking about it in my Twitch chat, which if you haven't gone and joined the Twitch chat, and you joined my live stream, you really got to check that out. I'll put a link on screen here so you can see it. It's going to be in the description. Come join us on Twitch. I'm live 6 days a week, although not on Sundays. So you can always check that out if you're ever interested to see how these things come come together live. But I was looking at it, and I realized that Flame Blades are interesting because it says at the bottom, as the Flame Blade is not physical, monks may use it without becoming uncentered. Now, I'm not a monk, and I don't plan on doing any type of multi-classing because I want to get that capstone. But Grandmaster of Flowers has a bunch of things that scale off of wisdom, and you're centered as long as you're not wearing armor. So in theory, I could wear cloth on this character and screw around in Grandmaster of Flowers at endgame, and not only screw around with Grandmaster of Flowers at endgame, but also have access to all the wisdom and the wisdom scaling abilities. So, since I'm wisdom-based, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to play the only character I might ever play that is a wisdom-based, non-monk Grandmaster of Flowers character. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll be posting a update with this character once we get all the way up to the cap and go through my thought process with that. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to turn it off. So that's it. See ya. Au revoir. Bye bye. Watch, like, and subscribe. Something. Watch the stream.